Hello fellow readers and readeresses. Given that at this point December is but a wisp of memory, I thought it would be about time for us to talk about my reading wrap-up for December 2022. This video will be predominantly a reading wrap-up as I already mentioned, but at the end of it we will have a bit of a TBR where I will mention some of the books that I am planning on reading for January 2023 without being too specific or too thorough. For the wrap-up, we're gonna go through the books in the order in which I finished them. Also, apologies for this rudimentary excuse for hairstyle. I had no time to deal with the hair today, or any other day for that matter, but whatever. Let's go. The first book we're gonna talk about is Running Blind by Lee Child. This is the fourth book, I believe, in Jack Reacher's series, and I buddy read it with a friend of mine in the beginning of December. I read it as an ebook because it's pretty much impossible to find it around here in English as a physical copy. I am still trying to, so maybe soon I will own it, but that is besides the point. I love this book. I think the execution and the plotting of it were absolutely phenomenal. I had such a great time, like always, reading Jack Reacher. I think this was a great book with a fantastic plot and an amazing atmosphere, and I am also very happy with where it ended, because during the last book that I read before that, the book number 3, Tripwire, I believe, it ended in a place where I wasn't necessarily liking it. Now I am very happy with the ending. I gave it 4 stars, and why I took a star away is because there is a bit of an infidelity in this book that is kind of brushed over, and I am not a fan of that, so I thought it deserved to have a star reduced. Still highly recommend. Jack Reacher's series is turning out to be one of my favorite series. Kind of unexpectedly, my mom highly recommended it to me, and it's not a thing that she would generally enjoy, but I think this is what got her into reading thrillers like that. And I think it's what's gonna get me into reading them as well. The second book I finished in December was Fire and Blood by George R. Martin. This is the first book in Targaryen history, kind of spin-off of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I initially wasn't sure how to rate a history book of a made-up world, but I ultimately gave it 5 stars because I had such a great time. And if you have soft spot for learning excruciating detail about a million people whose names you will have to remind yourself at every page, I think this is the book for you. Be warned though, it's gonna put you to sleep probably a few times, but still it was so interesting. I love the world of Ice and Fire. I want to know every single minute irrelevant detail about it, so I read this with great pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the next book in the series. Book number 3 I finished in December was Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. This is a children's classic that everybody is familiar with, but I had not read it in my life. This is such an adorable story. I so much wish I had read it as a kid, but I am still very happy I read it as a grown-up. It made me smile. It taught me so much about horses. It made me shed a few tears. Now I want to take care of horses all day, every day. It's such a funny thing. And if you have kids, please read it to them. I think it will be of great value to them. And if you don't, read it to yourself. I think it will give you some great time and great cozy vibes. I gave this one 5 stars. Next book I finished in December was The Girl in the Stars by Mark Lawrence. This is the first book in the Book of Ice series, which is a spin-off or a continuation or follow-up series to the Book of the Ancestor, which I read the trilogy a few years ago and absolutely loved. So I was very happy to be back in this world, although with different characters. I craved it. I loved how the world got expanded, how much more we got to learn about specific powers, about specific places, about the past. It was really cool. The one thing though that brought the rating quite down to 3.5 stars as I gave it was the fact that there was a lot of overuse of one specific power, and in a way that made the main character seem nearly invincible, and it wasn't done in a way that made it feel like it was earned. It just felt like she got these powers all of a sudden. The author simply alleged that she had struggled with those powers at one point and then immediately blasted through those limitations with no effort, basically. It kind of felt repetitive and it felt like there were no stakes. My emotional investment was reduced because of this lack of stakes and consequences, basically, and so that reduced the rating quite a lot. Still, I quite enjoyed the story and the world building that was significantly expanded in this book, and it made me so curious about what had happened in the past and what is going to happen in the future, and how this entire ecosystem has been built, and how have these powers come into play, the ones that have been shown to us in this series. series, so I'm gonna continue with the series at first opportunity. The next book I finished in December was Emma by Jane Austen. This is the Bulgarian edition. This is why we have these weird inhuman letters on the cover. I'm gonna say it right now, I gave this book 5 stars. It was absolutely fantastic. Jane Austen has the most amazing character work of all the classical authors I have read throughout the years. I can see these people, I can feel them around me, and I have the best time reading about every single minute detail of their day-to-day life and their meaningless dramas. In this book, you will also find one of the most multi-layered and flawed characters that Jane Austen has written as a protagonist, at least from what I have read from her right now. You will see her stumble through so many things and make the wrong choices, and you will enjoy doing it. You will not hate it in any way. You will not be frustrated. I think you will have the best time doing so because I did, and I am biased towards my opinion, obviously. This book was phenomenal. I am so happy I finally read it. Highly recommended. Book number, I forgot which number, of December was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This was on my books I want to read before the end of the year list. I will link the video over here if you'd like to watch it. I am so happy I finally read this book. This is a high fantasy and the first book in the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. It is very famous and for a good reason. Patrick Rothfuss has this amazing writing style that just lets the story flow without being a purple prose, without making you stumble and think and trying to wonder what the author is trying to say. It's just every single sentence, nearly every single sentence, is a piece of art, and it's so easy to understand and so easy to read. The character work in this book is also quite amazing. I am super impressed by what the author has been able to do with these characters, but more than anything, he has managed to build this magical world that just makes you want to go into it more and learn more about its past, about its history, about its mysteries. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It also made me quite emotional. At few moments I was tearing up, I gotta be honest. Not just the main character made me feel so emotional and empathetic towards him, but one of the supporting characters as well. And speaking of supporting characters, there are so many of them, and so many of them are so very notable. And I would like to underline here 2 of them. The first one being Auri, which made me so, like, she's so pure and so adorable and lovely, and the way she speaks just makes me want to hug her. It's fantastic. And the other one is Trappist. I think that's how you pronounce his name, the guy who's taking care of the orphans. I have no words to describe how much warmth in my heart I have for this character and for the way he took care of these kids. It was just absolutely fantastic to read, and that made me very emotional too. This entire book made me super unreasonably emotional, but I had a great time reading it. I'm looking forward to reading the second book in the series and the book number 2.5, which is The Slow Regard of Silent Things. Great title, by the way. And hopefully one day reading Doors of Stone if it ever comes out. I gave this one 5 stars. The next book I completed in December was Jade City by Fonda. This is an urban fantasy and the first book in the Greenbone saga. This book will definitely appeal to people who enjoy political intrigue in their books, and what it has to offer more than anything is a family dynamic that is very unique and the opportunity for you to ponder your own values and your perception for right and wrong. It has so many lovely characters that I alternately hated and loved and thought they were stupid and thought they were genius. I was at no point indifferent to any of the characters here. I think it has lovely action and a great magic system that borders on sci-fi. Is not going to be too much in the way. There's one particular thing that does some particular things, and that's pretty much all there is to it. I had a great time reading this and gave it 4 stars. I took a star away for one specific thing, and that's very particular to me, by the way, but it's the way too detailed love-making scenes. I didn't need to know so many things about what went where, with what amount of saliva, and how much of penetration actually occurred. It was too much. I didn't like it. I don't want it in my books, and that is obviously my personal taste, but that is my personal rating as well. So I gave it 4 stars, but I highly recommend it, and I'm going to continue with the series. Next, right around Christmas, I completed A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This is a Christmas classic, children's classic that needs absolutely no introduction to anybody, but I had not read it in my life. I had watched the Disney movies and other movies that were made based on the story, but I had never read it, and I thought it was finally finally time to do so, and I did, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't 5-star worthy in my opinion. There were some things that could have been shown more than told to us, but there's a lot of simple but great wisdom that this story has to bestow, and I think that's why it's timeless, and if you ask me, every single one of us should read it. The next book I completed in December was The Case of the Left-Handed Lady, which is the second book in the Enola Holmes series. I gave this one 3 stars. Why I did so was because first, I did enjoy the atmosphere quite a lot, just like in the first book of the series. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's very immersive and it just makes me feel so cozy. And I love being back in this atmosphere, and I love Enola's character. I think her self-expression and the way that she has been portrayed by the author is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. But I took away 2 stars from my rating because of the ludicrous twist at the end of the story and the wild conjecture that was used to explain the mystery. It was so out of nowhere, and the conclusion was reached with so little proof, if any, that it ruined the entire plot to me. I also don't like it when the message of the book comes before the story. The author repeated so many times how something is bad, and even though I agree with that, it was borderline insulting. Like, so many authors these days don't trust their readers to reach a conclusion on their own and spell out things that don't need to be spelled out, that every kid can deduce on their own. It's really frustrating to read something like that. I don't need you to tell me 25 times how bad wearing a corset is and how insulting to women. I understand. Anyway, I had a relatively good time, and I will continue in the series. Sorry if the camera angle changed, I had a little bit of a technical issue, so I had to fix it. Anyway, the next book I completed in December was one of the biggest surprises for me for 2022, and that is A Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I'm a bit of a Sarah J. Maas hater and a bit of a young adult fantasy hater, but in this case I gave it 5 stars after debating long and hard for reasons not to give it 5 stars, and that is only because I was comparing this book to other books from different genre and different category that I had given 5 stars to, and I unfairly thought that this doesn't deserve to be on the same list as them. But the truth is, as far as young adult fantasy goes, this is one of the best books out there in my personal opinion. I enjoyed the world building, I enjoyed the plot, that it was so twisted and so complicated, I enjoyed the development of the characters in this book even, and I enjoyed the semi-horror elements that were spread throughout the book, and at some points really made me feel uneasy. I had the best time reading this, and by the way, at the end of the first book, this is the second book in the Throne of Glass, I should have mentioned that maybe earlier, but at the end of the first book, I was kind of scoffing at some of the things that were kind of brought as a conclusion, and a lot of the things didn't make sense to me, but due to the reveals in this book, all of that started making sense, and I kind of understand now so much more. And I'm looking forward to the third book in this series so much more. The one thing I didn't necessarily enjoy was the romance, but I think it's just a me thing. Most of the young people that this book is addressing are probably gonna have no issue and even be very happy about it. But the truth is that the romance wasn't too much in the way and didn't bother me so much, so I really think this book is worthy of 5 stars, and so I gave it to it and highly recommend. The next book I completed in December was Hercule Poirot Christmas by Agatha Christie, which is book number I don't know what in the Hercule Poirot series. It is your usual whodunit mystery, and I gave it 5 stars because I think it was perfectly set up and executed. The plot was really convoluted, but all the clues were well laid out, and I still didn't manage to guess who the murderer is, which is very impressive because, not to brag, but I usually manage to guess the murderer in pretty much every thriller I read, and I think this was really exceptionally done. I had a lovely time. Highly recommend it for a Christmas read if you don't mind a murder or two with your eggnog and such. The penultimate book I completed in December 2022 is another big surprise to me, but in a different way than A Crown at Midnight was, and that is A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir, which I gave 2 stars to. Now, when it comes to this book, I enjoy the world building so much. I think the environment that the author sets is absolutely immersive and is one of my favorite settings, desert setting that is, but also the way that she got inspired by the Roman Empire was very well executed, not only in this book but also in the first one, and again, I think the world building is really noteworthy. And the only reason why I hated reading this book is because I feel as though the author hates her main characters and is doing everything she can to make us hate them as well. I already said that in my worst books of 2022. I will link the video over here if you want to watch it. Our main characters are just frustrating to read and to follow. They are being hasty and stupid when they should be quiet and calm and thoughtful, and they are being inert and inactive when they are supposed to take action. There was no catharsis to be had in this book. All the plot lines were resolved in a very unsatisfying way, and although that's going to be different for all people, I feel as though the promise of the premise was not withheld with this book. I left the book. I felt frustrated and annoyed. And just now, while I was editing the video, I realized that I had lost some of the footage. I am guessing that I ran out of memory and my camera stopped recording. And so I wanted to talk about the last book that I read in December, and that is A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This is my beloved mass market paperback that has been with me for many years and has been reread multiple times. And you can see that it's even been through some stuff and has been glued together. I love this one. I have like 4 or 5 copies of this book. Regardless, that's not important. I give this one 5 stars. Not surprising. One of my favorite books ever. And I think this time rereading it, I loved it even more than I have before. And you know what? This year, I read the most books that I have read in my entire life. You can watch my stats video over here. And I think that gave me more perspective and more ground to compare. And this book stands out so much above all the others, maybe with a few exceptions, but this book is a masterpiece. As soon as I reread it, I wanted to start reading it all over again. And of course, I'm going to move on to the rest of the A Song of Ice and Fire. And there's one thing that I wanted to stop here, and I keep on mentioning it in random videos, but this book on its own is a masterpiece. I don't need A Song of Ice and Fire to be completed. I want it to be completed. I will read it the minute it is out. I will stand out in the cold or hot weather, in rain and snow and whatever, waiting for it, and I will read it right away. But even if it never comes out, I don't need it to be out. I would be happy to be rereading the already out books in A Song of Ice and Fire until the rest of my days. Great book, 5 stars, the most 5-star worthy book out there. In addition to all the books that I completed in December, I had started reading Beckoning of the Gates by Benjamin J.Ryan. Unfortunately, I had to drop it because I wasn't having the best time. The author sent the book to me for an honest review, and I'm still going to try to complete it, but for the moment I wasn't feeling it, and so I left it for another time. And that will do it for the month of December. 13 books and over 6,000 pages read, which is my best reading month for 2022, and I am so happy about it. And because I forgot to film the TBR part, actually, we're gonna do that now with worse audio. And the first book that I'm definitely gonna read in January, because I already started it in December, is Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. This is a very famous, very well-known book that I have been meaning to read for a very long time now, actually, and I have owned for quite a while, and finally decided to pick it up. Started quite interesting. I'm not very much sure how I feel about the writing style so far, but other than that, I'm having a good time reading it. I haven't done much progress into it, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to finish it before the end of the month. Actually, I'm pretty sure I will be. The next book on this list is another one that I already started, and that is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book of the 4 that are gonna come out during this year, and I am so far enjoying it very much. It is a Cosmere novel, but it is a standalone as of right now. I'm having such a great time reading it. I'm actually pretty sure I'm gonna be able to finish it today, so expect my review soon. Book number 3 on my TBR is a buddy read that I'm starting with a friend of mine, and that is Valor by John Gwynne. This is the second novel in the Faithful and the Fallen series. I read Malice as the first book of last year and loved it, and I'm so excited to be reading this one. It's a chunker, but I'm pretty sure I'll be able to tackle it pretty quickly because I am super excited about these characters. The next book on my TBR is part of a project that I'm doing this year, which I will post a video about in a few days probably, and that is The Three-Body Problem by I can't pronounce this name properly, apologies. This is the first book of the Remembrance of Earth Past trilogy, and it's an adult sci-fi that is very famous. At least it was quite prominent on booktube a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken. It's a recommendation by a friend of mine, and I am super excited to read it within the next few weeks. And the last book on my TBR for January so far is A Clash of Kings by George R. R. Martin. This is the second book in A Song of Ice and Fire series. Everybody knows about it. It's going to be a reread for me, and I'm super excited about it. I reread A Game of Thrones in December and loved it more than I ever have. And this is going to be part of my goal to reread A Song of Ice and Fire in the year 2023. If you'd like to see my reading goals for 2023, you can check out this video. So yeah, I'm very excited about this. And these are going to be all the books on my TBR for January. That doesn't mean that that's all I'm going to read in January, but this is what I put as intention forth to read during the month. Hopefully I'll be able to tackle all of them. If not a big deal. Life goes on. I would be very happy to know what you read in the month of December, so please leave it in the comments down below. And if you'd like to see my reading stats for 2022 and my reading goals for 2023, check out this video. Bye!